We welcome you to also share any thoughts as we go through today's webinar in the chat, but we are going to get started. And so this is your official welcome. We're so happy that you are here with us for today's conversation on planning impactful fall employee engagement activities. I'm Lacey Gayton, the Senior Vice President of Corporate Programs at Points of Light. And some of you may be thinking to yourself, summer is just starting. Do we really need to be talking about fall projects? Others of you are probably worried that you're already behind in planning those fall projects. Wherever you are at on the spectrum, we are glad that you are here with us today to learn from two experts on planning successful employee engagement activities. With enough time, the right resources, accessible activities, and tips to be strategic with your planning. We're grateful for you joining us on your Friday as we discuss preparing for impactful fall employee volunteer activities with 2 Points of Light network leaders. For those of you who might not be familiar with Points of Light, we are a global, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to inspire, equip, and mobilize people to take action that changes the world. We partner with companies, nonprofits around, and NGOs around the globe, including an affiliate network in 39 countries, and with individuals interested in doing good. We are working to increase the number of people volunteering with purpose to address deep-rooted societal challenges. Advancing corporate social impact is a key part of that work. We come alongside CSR teams to help accelerate, amplify, or evolve your results. Points of Light hosts an annual conference coming up next month in June. We hope to see many of you there. And it has lots of great sessions for business leaders and convening leading companies through our Corporate Service Council. We can facilitate your team's strategic planning sessions, create a toolkit for your community champions, design a volunteer time off program, coordinate weeks of service, and lots more. We'd love to learn about your work and explore how we might support you as you make plans to engage your colleagues in volunteering or push forward on other social impact goals, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Now let's get into the topic of the day. My colleague, Katie Elder, Points of Light's Vice President of Corporate Insights, will get us started. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie now. Thanks,
Lacey,
Katie.
thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm thrilled that so many people have joined us today to explore ending the year with impact. As Lacey mentioned, some of you in our audience might be well on your way to developing your third and fourth quarter volunteer activities, whether you're hosting a day, a week, or a month of service, maybe general workplace volunteer initiatives or projects that tie into year-end holidays. And others still might be wondering where to begin, who to include in the planning process, and how to best collaborate with community partners. Now, having gone through this same process many times in my past, I know it can feel daunting, but it's also really exciting when things start to click into place and the buzz from your colleagues starts to grow in anticipation. So no matter where you are in that planning process, my hope for you today is that you leave with knowledge that will support you in creating meaningful and accessible activities that aid in successfully achieving your year-end social impact goals. And if I do my job well, today's session will also make you even better partners to the nonprofit organizations you choose to work with. So today we're going to start with some frequently asked questions and those that were submitted while you were registering. Our featured guests are pros at this and guide companies through planning meaningful volunteer activities every day. We'll also try to save time toward the end to tackle any relevant questions that are submitted through the Q&A, and you'll probably find that function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And of course, I also want to encourage you to use the chat, those of you who do have access to it. If you've got ideas or answers to the questions I'm posing, or possibly have gone through similar challenges and have ideas for overcoming them. And that way we can increase the learning for everyone, even myself. But let's get it underway, right? So I'd like to invite our guest speakers to turn on their cameras. And while they do that, I am going to launch a quick poll. We'd love to know where you are in the planning process for your second half of the year volunteer activities. Are you not quite ready to get started? Have you been planning already, maybe a couple weeks or months into the planning process? maybe your planning is nearly done, or for those of you overachievers, you're already done with your planning and you're ready for the fall to begin because you're ready to implement. Wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing. Looks like I'll give it another 2 seconds or so, and then I will end the poll. So 3, 2, 1. And I'll just share so you guys can see where your peers are at. Looks like right now you guys are well underway with planning, although a few out there have not started planning yet, which is perfect. That is probably why you've joined us today, right? Okay, so here are our fabulous, fabulous guest speakers today, Michelle D. and Jennifer Nash. I am grateful to have both of you here with us today. And my first question to you is so that the audience can get to know just how expert you are at this work. I would love for them to get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind, Michelle, I'll start with you. If you'll tell us a little bit about your current role and background, maybe how long you've been involved in mobilizing employee volunteers.
Sure. Thank you, Katie. My name is Michelle D. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Jersey Cares. I've been with Jersey Cares for 9 years, helping our corporate partners connect in meaningful ways with all of our nonprofit partners across New Jersey. We work with about 89 different corporate partners every year to help them plan meaningful service. My background is a little bit gypsy-ish. Before I came to this work, I was the air show director for 5 states in the Southwest. But I really started my journey in service in the military a very long time ago. So I come to this having been a school teacher in rural America and working with the military. And now I'm thrilled to be leading volunteers and helping our corporate partners find ways to engage.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you again for being here. Jen Nash, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Jennifer Nash. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Activation here at Points of Light, and I lead our team of program managers that work with our corporate partners as they engage in service through our global affiliate network. I have been at Points of Light for 18 years. The majority of that time, I have worked very closely with our affiliates and our corporate partners as they think through the best ways to engage in communities to create the greatest impact. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be presenting with Michelle D., one of our experts in the network. And let's get started, Katie.
So, okay, that's it. See, y'all out there in the audience, now you know why I brought these two folks in because they are experts at this work. They've been doing it day in and day out. So let's get started with some really hard questions. So my first question to you both that came actually while folks are registering. Are those days, weeks, months of service still valuable? And something that was similarly related, what's the best way to engage, say, an 8,000 plus workforce that's both meaningful to employees and their local community? Feel free to share your thoughts.
Go ahead, Jen. You can go first.
Sure. So I will say that the days, the weeks, or the months of service are very valuable, right? I think they are a galvanizing moment for companies. They're very valuable to the culture of the company because they help to build a connection with communities where they operate, and it helps to build pride in their brand, right? So when a company commits to a cause or causes, they can dedicate these days or weeks or months of service to go deeper in communities with their partners and provide more solutions in that cause area. When there's a designated day or week or month of service, it can be easier for companies to work with their community partners to create projects and programming that have the greatest impact. And one example that comes to mind is one of our pharma partners that does an annual week of service in the summertime. They engage over 16,000 employees around the world, and they have a focus on STEM. So in addition to some of the year-long smaller service projects that they do in the schools or with their youth serving partners, their annual week of service, it allows them to address some of those more systemic challenges with their partners and go deeper with their impact. And so it really helps those schools and community partners better prepare for those moments in time, because over the course of the year, they've been doing smaller projects. They've been understanding the needs of those school partners. So when they have the annual sort of summertime day of service, they can develop projects with the greatest impact for both the community and their volunteers. So I would say that yes, these things are still cool and valuable. You can definitely plan and engage thousands of employees effectively through those dedicated days or weeks or months of service.
Thanks, Jen. Michelle, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think I agree with Jen. I would also just say that it's also very company and community specific. I just saw someone post in the chat that, living in a rural community, they may not have those same type of opportunities. And I think that there is something magical about that large day of service, but also it's about the depth and the breadth of the service. And maybe it works better for you to do a long-term commitment that you tackle in smaller bites.
And things can evolve too. I would add, you may start out because this is just something new. You're galvanizing your workforce together. And maybe after, say, 10 years of doing that same type of thing, it's time to now, sunset it and do things throughout the year. You get the best of both worlds that way, right? And your community partners are really, you're helping your community partners address those needs year round. Okay, next hard question. What guidance would you give to help our audience balance local employee interests versus those company focus areas that sometimes take precedence, maybe in leadership minds?
I think my suggestion is know your goals, but also know your employees. Some companies are very focused and they know that they're working towards the SDGs and really what their focus is. But I think that you as an organization have to understand what your goals are. And then I would say understanding also what your employees' goals are, because if the best of both worlds is being able to meet both of those goals.
100%. I would also add, there could be other ways to, maybe your volunteer activities are dedicated to strategic focus areas, but there are other wraparound programs you have that allow employee choice. Jen,
Yeah.
were you going to say something?
Yeah, I would add to what you're saying, because I would encourage anybody, don't attempt to be everything for everyone. You will drive yourself crazy, right? So there should be plenty of opportunities throughout the year for employees to explore those volunteer activities that align with their personal interests and goals. And so I will say that when you're thinking about company-wide activities with your partners that support your focus areas, I think the actual tasks probably matter more than the employee's interest, right? Because you may have employees that, really like to do hands-on activities, or some that really like to do skills-based activities, right? So being able to offer that variety, I think creates some of that balance. We've had partners that said, hey, we want to do all skills-based activities for our employees for our company-wide days of service, and never survey their employees to figure out, are we even interested in doing skills-based activities? And so consequently, there might be low turnout for those projects, or satisfaction expressed on satisfaction surveys. And so the reality is, you might not be able to survey everyone to figure out what everyone is interested in before your day of service, but definitely planning with your community partners to make sure that those projects do have a variety of activities that might be of interest to as many people as possible, I think is important. So there could be interactive activities or virtual activities, or those activities for people with physical limits. Just offering that variety, I think, helps to create some of that balance, and it creates better satisfaction among your volunteer population.
And Jen, I would also say that, sorry, Katie, on that, I think one of the things that I love seeing the most at volunteer projects is the team building that happens and the ways that you get to know your fellow employees. And when you're offering a whole variety of opportunities that maybe are outside people's normal skill sets, I always love finding out that the lady from HR secretly has a trunk full of tools that she brings to her projects. And so I think it also gives employees opportunities to get to know each other in deeper ways.
We like finding people with hidden talents at volunteer projects. It's always fun.
That's true. And you can learn some great skills while you're there. Power
Absolutely.
tools, some of my favorite things to work with. All right, fabulous. Thank you both. So now back again to the meat of why we're here today, talking about planning. Since most of our attendees are in the process of it, have any tips to make the planning process go smoothly this fall, especially for those in our audience who haven't yet started?
Tip number one, definitely for those that haven't started, start now. Start planning now. As you can imagine, in the fall, it's a time when the kids go back to school, the weather's changing, it's more pleasant. It is a very, very popular time of year for people to volunteer, especially with holidays like, Breast Cancer Awareness, Veterans Day, Family Volunteer Day, like all of these special occasions are in the fall happening. And so it's a really popular time for people to volunteer. And so I would say, start planning now, so that you have options, right? And also be flexible. Like, because it's such a busy time for volunteering, flexibility is key, because your nonprofit partners are getting calls from so many different groups and companies, and they're trying to balance their day-to-day mission-driven work with managing all of these requests that they're getting for volunteer projects. So I would ask, please be flexible with the dates or the types of projects that you want to do, because the nonprofits, the demand for their services is pretty high in the fall. So those are the top two things I would say. Start now and be flexible, and realize that a lot of these nonprofits are working with very small staff sizes, and a few dedicated volunteer leaders. And so anything you can do to help make it a little bit easier for them to host your volunteer teams, that would be great for everyone.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would add to that we see a lot of interest in volunteering with some of our school-based partners in the fall. And just in reality, if you're looking to do something, for example, with a school, you should already be having those conversations, because people are pushing towards the end of the year. It's about to be summer. And in reality, nobody has time for anything happening outside of school the first few weeks of school. So, in addition to the flexibility with nonprofit partners, really, if you're thinking about doing something education based in the fall, you need to be reaching out now, unless that's already an established partnership. The other thing that I would really say is, think about employees at all levels and different ways that you can find to engage those employees. Sometimes, when we're thinking about different types of industries, it's hard to think about how to engage people that maybe are in call centers or are in manufacturing facilities. And there's a lot of creative ways to do that, but it takes a little bit longer to plan some of those things. And sometimes it happens, in all honesty, as an afterthought. And so what I would say is, as you're planning your fall activities now, think about incorporating all employees. And if you're pushing towards one focus, I would say that think about ways, for example, if you're working with a veterans organization and you're doing an on-site project, are there things that people that can't get away from their desk could do to support those activities? So just some ideas around getting all of your employees involved.
And that's really key, I think, for me at least, to impress upon our audience, surveying them and ahead of time, and not just your employees, but also those business leaders that are leading those functions that make it, or the operations that make it harder for those employees to step away, talking to them now to understand the guardrails. And then, of course, and this addresses one of the questions I just saw in the chat about skills based, like understanding what skills or expertise or the types of activities you want to do and bringing them to your community partner, and let them help you figure out how to apply those skills and talents best, instead of saying, we've got 100 folks, we're going to show up on X day, we want to do XYZ. let them help drive, so that you're actually meeting community needs rather than dictating. Now, of course, again, you want to understand your employee interests and the skills and talents that they'll bring. So there is some work to do ahead of time, but really help co-creating those solutions with your community partners, right? Perfect. Okay. How should leaders in the audience know how many volunteer slots to create in each market? I know that's really tactical, but to me, this was hard to do to figure out. When I come to my nonprofit partner and I say, I want to engage X number of volunteers, well, everybody says they're interested, but then we get a little attrition, nobody showed up for the last project. So do you guys have any thoughts, ideas on how to balance that or gauge that?
Yeah, I would say there's no like clear cut like equation that you can give to calculate volunteer slots. But I would advise you not to make assumptions. Like the best people to help calculate, participation are those volunteer champions or local ambassadors in those offices. Like they really have a clear sense of participation rates to help you be more accurate and give you more accurate estimates so that you're not overestimating or underestimating. If you're asking that question because you have a particular participation goal for your day or your week or your month of service, or you're trying to stay within a certain budget amount, then that's something you can determine without that extra help, but it's not going to help you with attrition, right? So if you say we're going to engage, 10% of our population, but really are not thinking market by market, how to apply that 10%, obviously there are some pluses and minuses to that, but understand that when you make assumptions at that headquarters level, some of the offices, might not be happy. Others might be happy with the number of volunteer slots that they are allotted. But always defer to those experts at each of your offices and each of your locations before setting your goals, because that way you'll probably hit your target or get close to your target with with that feedback and with that advice from those local offices.
Perfect. Okay. Here's another hard one, ladies. This one happens to be one I hear over and over again. How do I increase participation in projects related to what we just talked about? Maybe over previous years' results. How am I getting more employees engaged in these projects?
I think one of the things that I would say is, I see a culture, word of mouth is, I think, the number one driver that we see for people. When people are excited about a project and they're talking about it, that helps increase participation year over year, and also buy-in. Are you is leadership at all levels, from the most senior C-suite leaders to the frontline supervisors, bought into what you're doing, and do they believe in it? And that helps. Those two things are the two things that I see most often. And having it be something that's meaningful and engaging, and people really feel connection to the work, helps drive people to want to come back year after year and bring their friends with them.
And any tips from you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say before you make the decision to increase, just ask yourself a series of questions, right? So first, are you ready for growth? What's our participation been like historically, right? So is this the right time to grow participation? Is it on a rise? Is it on a decline? Is there a demand from employees? Are there wait lists for the projects that are informing our decision? Are you just increasing just to increase? Or are you considering the impact in the communities by increasing engagement? Do you have the budget to increase participation? Because as we know, volunteering is not free. So do I have the budget to increase our participation? Are you making those decisions strategically, just based on what the priorities are for our department? And I would say just ask yourself those series of questions. And are there enough community partners that serve in our impact areas that can, manage an increase in our participation, right? Like, is there anybody that's able to host us if we decide to increase by, 10, 15, 20%? So I would say be strategic when creating those goals by not only making a business case for increasing participation, but also make a needs-based case for the increase, just so you can really understand why it's important and why now is the best time for us to increase participation.
I would underscore that with, are we increasing just to hit higher numbers, or are we increasing because the need needs us to have more people serving in these capacities or addressing these social issues? And I'll also mention, and there was a question submitted from one of our attendees about remote opportunities, virtual. And I know one thing we've seen more and more companies do here at Points of Light and through our global network are offering more educational opportunities that also count as volunteering. So it's a lunch and learn or a webinar or even an in-person session. Well, I guess not if you're addressing remote employees. We'll keep it on Zoom. But ways for that nonprofit partner to come in and talk about the issues that are taking place in that community or the specific issues they're addressing. What are the systemic reasons why this social issue persists? And a lot of companies are baking that sort of listening and learning component into a day or a week or month of service, or those general, end of the year holiday projects, just so employees better understand what's going on in their community. And that also connects to their why. We talk about that, and when it comes to storytelling and connecting to you just never know how an employee may be touched by that particular cause, and adding in those listen and learn components, I think, can do a lot. And count them as a volunteer hour. Why not, right? Okay, next question. How can the audience create equitable, accessible volunteer activities for the second half of the year? So we talked a little bit already about those, we'll say, the roles that are harder to walk away from the job, those who are on the production line or in a retail environment, even those remote employees. Do you have any tips about project ideas even to help our audience better connect with those and connect with those employees and find ways to engage them in their bigger, maybe week or month of service?
Jen,
Michelle,
you
I
got
can. I,
okay,
Michelle,
over to me.
you're the
Okay.
expert, but I will jump. I'm going to jump in.
It's up to you. You can go first, or I can follow up.
No,
So I'll go, Jen. We do a
okay.
lot of this. We have actually gotten to the point where when we do large days of service, first of all, we always build in at the request. It's a standing request now. We always build in a portion of volunteer opportunities that are remote, because there is always a component of people who maybe aren't in the office that day, or are located in another location, or just for business demands can't step away for that amount of time. So we're always virtual opportunities are here to stay. And we're building them into everything that we do. We've also had a lot of success doing projects that are very short projects, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half in person. And those are some of those kit-based projects, but we've done things where one shift will create a portion of the item and the next shift will complete the item. We do a lot of that for teacher classroom packs, so to support teachers in schools. Those are really unique ways also for people to kind of come together and work on a similar project. But a lot of the virtual stuff we do, we just honestly, as a nonprofit, we ship kits around the country for if a corporation asks us to, and we'll do a Zoom and come together to do that kit creation. But we'll also do, like you were saying, Katie, we have a lot of opportunities that are more service learning based with a component of creation at the end. But it really has been transformative, as you said, for a lot of employees who maybe didn't understand deeply some of the issues. We've also leaned really hard into the civic circle and helping people understand all the different ways that they can get involved in their communities outside of volunteering, because being a more civic-minded individual helps drive us forward. So those are just some of the things that we're working towards.
Yeah. How about you? Great project ideas. I've seen a lot of questions around virtual. So if you have those, that's great. Or those on-site quick projects.
Yeah, so Michelle, you gave some great examples, and I'm going to give a shameless plug and say that third-party vendors can bring the fun to your office or your facility. It's always a great option, right, to engage a Jersey Cares or engage an agency that can bring the fun to your office is always great. So someone that can set up in the break room or the conference room where there's heavy traffic in your office is helpful. Kit packing is a popular activity. I think everyone has done that before. But I've seen things like furniture builds, building recycling bins, building playhouses, bike builds, food drives, etc. It runs the gamut. Another option could be potentially like inviting multiple nonprofit partners that you have to your office or facility and hosting, a nonprofit fair that can both educate your employees about the mission of those agencies as well as do some type of volunteer activity, component. So that's a great way to bring the fun to your office. If you're in an office that's kid friendly or a facility that's kid friendly, you can host field trips for students to get, to have them exposed to your industry and learn from your employees. There's a multitude of things that you can do. But I would say, work with that third party vendor, like a Jersey Cares, to help develop either those virtual or on-site opportunities to engage those workers. I know right now we are working with a retail partner who does not have volunteer time off for their employees. And so they're offering one option for employees to go off-site and do a project with a nonprofit partner. And then a second option for those workers that aren't able to leave the stores, that'll be on site. And so that's a way for them to go deeper with those partners, do more for those partners, and engage all employees, no matter what level in the company they are, whether they're full-time, salaried employee or an hourly worker. Everybody will be able to be involved in the project and do their part in the work. So there's ways around it, but certainly working with that third party partner to help you think through, how to best engage those employees is important.
Music to my ears, Jen. Thank you for really driving the point home about first planning in advance, of course, talk to those people, understand what their guardrails are, and then talking to your community partner about how you can best meet the needs of the community, but also the interests and abilities of those employees, right? That's sort of where the best recipe for success is, I think. Okay, here's another popular question we got. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to answer this. How does one stretch their budget?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. So the first thing that I'm going to say is that, your nonprofit partners are facing all the same budget constraints that you are. We're all facing rising inflation. We're all facing salary compression. So candidly, we have the same budget issues that you guys do. And so that's just my shameless plug for, valuing the work that your nonprofit partners are doing and appreciating the expertise that they bring to the table. But we work with our partners in a myriad of ways to help them stretch their budget because we understand everyone's working under constraints. So some of the things that we do for our partners is we'll build a year's, and you can think about doing in your own organization is, you build a year's worth of service. You look at the things that are important to you and you work with to build these days where everybody is out, and we call them custom corporate days of service where, maybe you have every other month a group of people out doing something, or you have your large day of service. And then throughout the year, you can build in other things like collection drives, or ways to get out and do a park cleanup, or these listen and learns, or focus on the civic circle. And so there's really a way to build an entire year's worth of service and stretch your budget while still having these large, meaningful days or these weeks of service. There's a lot of things that I think employees want to do, and a lot of that is learning. And I think that more and more companies are incorporating that as well because when people understand more deeply about the work that they're doing and why it matters, it becomes even more impactful. And so I think that building in those learning opportunities as well as those days of service is a great way to stretch your budget as well.
Wonderful. Now, if I recall, there are, of course, some that are maybe lower cost alternatives. Now, again, we want you to be working with your nonprofit partner to understand their needs before you decide that they are going to offer you a lower cost alternative. But I know some food banks that they just need volunteers, so those may be able to offset maybe a higher cost project that you do later on. Resume reviews, things like that. But we don't want to understate, that our nonprofit partners, our community partners, are also faced with the same types of inflation and higher costs to do business, et cetera. So unfortunately, all the budgets need to rise, I think, to meet expectations and needs. Okay, great. Just a few more questions. Okay, so at points of light, certainly when we were thinking about our corporate partners and the questions that we get from them, they talk a lot about impact measurement. I think that's something that everyone is trying to get their head around, understand how they can tell their leadership what was accomplished by each of these volunteer activities, why it matters. So are there any tips about KPIs, key performance indicators, that attendees should be collecting, or how they should be collecting that data? Any tips and tricks?
So the thing, I guess I'll back up. So obviously there are KPIs and then there's outputs, right? And so the outputs are the common things that we track, like number of volunteers, number of volunteer hours, people served, et cetera. But when you're talking about KPIs, you're really trying to measure the change that occurred as a result of the activity. And it indicates progress made towards a goal that you might have. And so, you're tracking that goal, and to see where you need to make adjustments or changes to the program is where you measure your KPIs. And so first, I would say determine what the goals of your program are or volunteer activity is to help develop those KPIs that meet your goals. So for example, like you may have a company that has a goal to expose like 5% of all high school students in that community to careers in STEM. I'll just give an example. So that's a pretty easy thing to measure as far as output, right? Because you know how many students there are, you know how many schools there are, and you can assign volunteers based on that. And so you can develop those KPIs to make sure that the volunteer activities are heading towards that goal of 5% of all high school students. Or you might have a goal around talent, right? The KPIs that you develop is it related to talent retention or talent recruitment? So then your company's goal might be, we want to retain 80% of all employees that volunteer. That's lofty, right? But but yeah, right. That's lofty. But you can create KPIs that make a case, for a direct correlation between volunteerism and employee retention. So I would say, differentiate the outputs versus those KPIs when you're developing, your goals, and track towards it. It's important that your program have both community and business goals, and that they're smart, obviously, and the data that you collect from employees and partners speaks to your goals. And so, make sure that your KPIs are things that you can control and contribute to directly. Do not, I would say, don't overclaim your impact, right? When you develop those KPIs. In the previous example that I gave, you might say that you'll reach 5% of all high school students, but is it safe for you to say that because we volunteered, everybody graduates or everybody stays enrolled in school? Like that's not something you have control over. So really, when you're developing those KPIs, really make sure that you're able to support that claim with the data that you are able to collect.
Great point. Michelle, anything to add?
No, Jen, that was all the things.
Yeah.
She's been doing this for a little while, that's for sure. And I would, again, underline, don't, tell somebody you're going to collect this kind of data or prove this point unless you can collect the right data that helps support it. So working backwards is always, I think, the right way to do. And also, don't decide by the end of the project you want your nonprofit to report on some type of impact. And remember, we really are trying to move everyone to thinking about the outcomes, the impact of the service, not just the outputs, the numbers, but making sure, that your nonprofit partner is on board with the information you want them to share with you at the end of the project, well in advance of collecting that data, because they can help you devise those collection pieces. And just another plug again for surveying employees, maybe before projects and after projects, so that some of the business impact you do want to capture is their change in perception, maybe around their employer, their change in sentiment around community issues, or their awareness. So having a pre-survey and then a post-survey can help you see how the progress has happened.
Katie, the only thing, and I'll jump in because this ticked to the top of my brain, the only thing we're kind of a trend that we're seeing when we're talking about KPIs is people are already also starting to track more about the change in the individual volunteer and their perceptions and the way they interact in their space. So I think that is also something that you could be thinking about how to include in your measurements and your KPIs as well.
Very important, we know. And we know there are reports and research out there about how volunteering together can help overcome a lot of issues that are prevalent in our society. And so why not use those markers to help showcase the value that your volunteer program offers to your employer or to the community where your employer operates. Okay, I have 2 last questions for you. Let me just check the Q&A. I think we've got these. These are about virtual volunteering, which was great. I can see that is still very popular, and you're right. It will not be going away anytime soon. Okay. What are the top 1 or 2 things that must be considered to ensure that the volunteer activities that our audience are in the midst of planning, that they are meaningful and impactful? What are the top 1 or 2 things that a leader must consider during the planning process?
I would say for me, it's trust your partner. You're an expert in your people and in your organization and your goals, but trust the people that are on the front lines and trust the people in the community that you're partnering with to help guide you to some of those solutions. I think that given the opportunity to work together to come up with creative solutions, that a lot of times you're going to be surprised by the solutions that the nonprofit partners are going to come up with, and they really are the experts in what they need and the best way to move forward for their organization.
Way to ensure meaningful impact.
Yeah.
Jen, how about you?
I would add on the other side of that coin, impact for your employees. I feel like the way you start and end your volunteer activities are very important elements to ensure that it's impactful. And so when you start, by educating those employees and sort of setting the context for those projects, whether it's through recruitment or orientation, volunteers go into it with a really clear understanding about the importance for the day and the impact of the work that they're doing. So, as they're in the break room, putting, straws or pipe cleaners into a Ziploc bag, they're not thinking, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? You've already set the context for the day. You've told them that these are the tools that our teachers in our community need to help teach, important concepts around STEM. So it doesn't seem like a meaningless experience for them. And on the, at the end of the day, definitely doing a sincere thank you and acknowledgement and celebration of what was accomplished for the day is certainly impactful. Saying, thank you for packing these 1,000 STEM kits, because now 1,000 students living in our communities have a new tool to help them learn about science, technology, engineering, and math. And so starting the day with that education, ending the day with that celebration, and quantifying the impact of the work that they did for the day is very important for the volunteer impact on the side of that coin.
I'm just taking notes. Sorry. Those were smart things that you shared. Okay, first, last question for my very fabulous industry experts. What would be, so if you had to wrap up what we just talked about for the past 40 minutes or so, what would be your top 1 or 2 takeaways for attendees as they start or continue their planning process for fall volunteer activities?
I would say for fall volunteer activities, even though they seem a long ways away, be flexible, because for those of us that are planning those projects, it's today. So be flexible and be willing to go into it with an open mind and adjust your needs and maybe some of your visions, and trust your partner that they're going to make a wonderful experience for you.
Flexibility and start now. For those of you that have not started, it is not too late. But whatever you do, don't let the summer pass by because it'll be here before you know it, and options will dwindle. So definitely start now. And then I would say also, trust your partners on both sides of the fence. Trust your community partners that they'll help identify those projects that will have the greatest impact, and also trust your employee ambassadors that they will help you to promote and recruit volunteers and really make your goals around your day, week, or month of service come to fruition. So trust your partners and start now will be the 2 things that I would add.
I love it. I should have had everyone put that on their forehead or something. It's subliminal messaging for our attendees. Awesome. All right. So I saw a couple of questions in the chat about DIY projects, and I'll just, since we have a few minutes, I'll tee it up. Anybody on the line, for sure, drop those ideas into the chat. And then if Michelle or Jen, if you have any, DIY projects. So I'm assuming those are maybe for remote employees who might be by themselves. We've done what? The dog toys, chew toys are good ones. So fleece blankets, probably the very first volunteer project I ever did. You can even do kit packing, DIY style. Any other thoughts on DIY projects?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm
Overall.
just, yeah, so we have a menu of about 90 kits that you can choose from at Jersey Cares. And that's just because we've worked with our partners for so many years and they have different needs. So we're always developing new kits. For the remote space, I think that it really comes down to impact area. You said dog chew toys. We've worked with veterans organizations and remote volunteers to actually create dog door pulls to be able to help service dogs open doors. I think we do a lot of stuff in the mental health space remotely now, where we're creating kits for both teachers and students in school to help them address some of their mental health issues and raise awareness around mental health. What I would say is anything that you could think of, any impact area, there's a way to create a kit or a remote opportunity that raises awareness for your team members and has a creative component so that they can leave a piece of themselves behind. And I think that it's just working with your partners in a creative way and coming up with those ideas together.
Yes.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that Michelle, I'm so glad you added that at the end, because I have seen people with very great intentions donate things to nonprofits that they either cannot use or do not want. And so I would say, before attempting to do a DIY project, definitely reach out to those nonprofit partners, partner with them, find out what they need, and develop your projects that way. Because I would hate for anybody to waste money or time, building kits and nobody needs them. And so, again, trust your partners.
Thank you. That's a perfect way to, I think, segue to our closing. It's again, like, I know as a corporate social impact leader, you're out there trying to ideate, like brainstorm all these unique things and new ways that your employees can get engaged in an issue or with a particular community. But you do not have to do it alone. I mean, it's the truth. You talk to your nonprofit partners because, again, they're going to have the best ideas of what is needed at the moment. And so, again, yeah, maybe I should put that on your foreheads too. Start now and trust your partners. Okay, perfect. Thank you both. Thank you, Jennifer and Michelle, for being with us today and for sharing your expertise with our attendees. I know that they are more knowledgeable and hopefully a little more confident in planning volunteer activities for their colleagues for the second half of the year. And of course, I could not do this without you. And I appreciate all of our attendees who joined us for taking the time during a very busy personal and professional season. I am going to close this out with just a few more closing remarks. I do have some slides to share with you all. And so hopefully everybody can see that. I want to remind everybody that the learning does not need to end here. As Lacey mentioned, we have planned, the Points of Light team has planned an inspirational and educational conference for social impact leaders next month in Houston. It's going to be great, and I hope to see you all there. You'll find more information on our website, and we'll drop a link in the chat too. And then I've got one more. So for everyone who's registered for today's webinar, we'll be sending out the recording and the top takeaways, which I know will include be flexible, start now, trust your partners, co-create solutions. We're going to send that out as soon as we can. And that'll also, include a link to a survey that we would love for you to fill out. And if you happen to have your phone handy, this QR code will take you to that survey. I just can't overstate how important it is for me to hear your feedback so that we can continually improve these learning opportunities and really know, what's top of mind for you. So on behalf of Points of Light and our fabulous teammate, Michelle at Jersey Cares, part of our global network, we thank you for being here today. Connect with us, and we will hopefully see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.